So as we approach the end of the year, we reflect on the United States President Donald Trump's first year back in the Oval Office. While his decisions have been visibly divisive within the U.S., beyond the borders, there has also been a notable increase of loud dissenting voices. Senior research fellow at Africa-Asia Dialogues is Thembisa Fakude, joins us now to unpack the core of his foreign policies. Thank you so much for your time on the program this hour. So there's just so much to unpack and so much to talk about on this. And the U.S. recently conducted strikes against the Islamic State-linked militants in northwest Nigeria. And this is a move framed as counter-terrorism, cooperation, but also justified by Trump through the lens of protecting Christians. Just how do you assess the logic of this operation? And was it primarily about countering terrorism or domestic political signaling, or just something else?
Well, it's something else, of course. I mean, this is Donald Trump, who now portrays himself as a crusader, a savior of Christians, in a country which has got almost an equal split in terms of Islam and Christianity. And he decides to go and protect Christians, notwithstanding that Muslims in the north, particularly in areas as Maiduguri, Kaduna and others, have been suffering for years from Boko Haram that has been abducting young girls and marrying them off into these criminals. And he has to wait until there were some whisperings of ISIL, which has not been that prominent in terms of its action in Nigeria compared to what Boko Haram has been doing. And he has gone on to attack those installations. And of course, we know that it's often when these things happen, it's civilians that are suffering. So you're going to have more and more Muslims killed in that part of the world. And I think this is likely to further increase the political cleavage between the Christians and Muslims in Nigeria.
And Mr. Fakude, Trump once campaigned on ending endless wars, yet we're seeing renewed U.S. military action in Africa. Just to what extent does this represent a departure from his stated foreign policy principles, and what might it signal about his approach to U.S. military engagement abroad?
Well, it's all about business, right? We've seen what he's doing in Venezuela in terms of securing oil supplies. He's doing exactly the same at the moment in Nigeria. Atlantic is going to be a competent space or waters moving forward. The United States economy has decided to revert and insist on continue using fossil fuels. Nigeria has got a lot of oil reserves, which have been mismanaged. And this is a new source of extracting minerals in the form of oil from Nigeria to the United States. We also know that the Americans are very busy in Angola, another oil-rich country, with the Lobito corridor. So it's business. That's the first point. The second point is Nigeria also is part of ECOWAS, which has had an emergence of what is known as the Sahel alliance, countries such as Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger forming their own alliance, and countries that are effective there, that is external countries that are playing a major role in that part of the world. Chinese, Russians, and United Arab Emirates are very visible. And Trump sees this opportunity for himself to go and install and entrench himself, particularly the American military hardware, in that part of the world. So this has got nothing to do with the love of God or Christianity, but it's got a lot to do with serving Donald Trump's ambition. As you know, he's a transactional man. He has got no free lunches with anyone in the world.
Sure, and still on that, critics continue to argue that framing violence in Nigeria in, religious terms just oversimplifies a complex security crisis where both Muslims and Christians would suffer. And how effective or risky is it for the U.S. foreign policy to adopt this narrative in shaping military cooperation?
Well, it's likely to backlash on Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president of Nigeria, who has been supporting this. And you have a lot of politicians and others in the south who are also supportive of this. But the people who are currently not happy with this involvement because it's going to impact on them are Muslims in the north. So this is going to certainly continue creating schism between the Nigerians, and it's not going to lead into any form of national cohesion in that country, nor is it going to suppress ISIL. The most imminent and present danger at the moment in Nigeria is Boko Haram. And one wonders, why are these attacks not directed at Boko Haram? Instead, they're directed at a new phenomenon, which many Nigerians have dubbed as pure criminality perpetrated by people called the bandits. It's got nothing to do with religion. It's got nothing to do with Christians. But these are all Nigerians, both Christian and Muslims, alike affected by this new form of criminality. But instead, you have the government of Nigeria coming up with an alliance with Donald Trump to go and save Christian in inverted commas in the north.
And let's zone in now to the G20 summit, which happened in the country just over a month ago. Trump has not only boycotted the recent G20 that happened in Johannesburg, but he also went as far as barring South Africa from the next G20, citing unfounded claims about white genocides and human rights abuses. Just how much of this is grounded in U.S. strategic interests versus domestic political posturing, which is also what Trump has been known for?
Well, it's got a lot to do with Trump's ego. It's got nothing to do with anything else. Of course, we all know that the white genocide is a lie. There were reports that some of those that have gone to the United States wanted to come back to South Africa for holidays. How strange is that? So you ran away from genocide and suddenly you want to come and visit friends and family for Christmas. It still doesn't make sense, but we didn't hear much reported in the media about that. So this is about Trump's ego, and South Africa, of course, is going to be on the right side of history moving forward. But we're all waiting with bated breath to hear what the other members of the G20 are going to be saying. Because if you want to save the integrity and credibility of G20, there must be those that are going to stand up and say, South Africa must be allowed to participate. But so far, we haven't had much. Donald Trump is going to go ahead with his intentions, but the winner in this regard is going to be South Africa, who's going to be on the right side of history. And I think if the G20 in the United States does continue without South Africa, is going to lose all form of credibility.
Sure. And given that the G20 agenda under South Africa, we saw the focus was more on climate, inequality and development. And those were some of the areas that Trump opposes, as the US. It distanced itself from multilateral priorities or carving a new agenda of sorts. Just what might this, portend for global cooperation just going forward?
Well, first of all, G20 is not G20's decisions are not binding. So these were part of the agenda that were presented to G20, but it was not meant that they were going to be compulsory and binding to all members of the G20. There are many other platforms that are pursuing similar agendas that has got a much more stronger positions and binding instruments in terms of pursuing these objectives. So whether G20 decides to throw these out the window as Trump is going to do really doesn't matter, because South Africa's got bilaterals and there are other multilateral platforms that are looking at advancing the same objectives that were presented at G20. So I don't think it's going to impact these objectives nor trajectory.
And we heard as well how South Africa has hit back and has also accused the US of unilateralism and political retaliation. Just what are the broader implications for the US-Africa relations if this rift continues to deepen, especially with issues like AGOA, trade preferences and regional diplomacy that are so at stake at this point?
Well, AGOA has been kind of extended or renewed. South Africa is still part of it. There were no reports of South Africa being expelled. By the way, South Africa is an important and a strategic country in the world, and the United States knows that. We've got critical minerals, we've got all the minerals that are needed at the moment in the new technologies, whether it's electronic vehicles and AI. So you can't just write South Africa off, number one. Number two, geographically, we are blessed. We sit on where both oceans meet, Atlantic and Indian Ocean meet, and anyone who wants to get anywhere from east and west using waters, you have to go past South Africa. So we're not a small country. We are a serious country with very strategic position, but at the same time, systems work in this country. We're a democracy that functions. We've had, constant elections and economy, notwithstanding that has been slow growth, but it works. Systems are working. Political system is much more stronger. So those that decide to isolate South Africa do so at their own peril, and the United States is going to be one of those losers. So notwithstanding all of these noises that we have from the United States, South Africa is still needed, but Africa importantly needs South Africa because we are one of those voices that continue advocating the advancement and development of Africa, but we're a strong nation as well. The African Union will not survive without South Africa because of our muscle and financial support that we continue giving African Union. So they need us. But importantly is that we are closer to the new competitors of the United States, particularly China. So China is just across the water, some will say, from South Africa, direct crossing from here to Beijing. And that relationship is very important. The United States fear that relationship. So in terms of Africans' relations, South Africa is very important and will continue playing a key role. And the United States knows that, and they know that they must continue maintaining these relationships with South Africa.
And here's the thing, the US played a key role in brokering the 2025 peace deal between the DRC and Rwanda. Just what leverage or diplomatic strategy has the Trump administration used to bring both parties to the table? And what are the chances that this agreement will hold in the long term?
Well, of course, you know that it's all a joke. Donald Trump did not bring both countries. Yes, he invited them over to sign. He did not initiate this. There are a lot of countries that have been involved, particularly Qatar, that has been playing a very, very important role in terms of making sure that these two nations, Rwanda and the DRC, Felix Tshisekedi, meet and continue discussing peace. What Donald Trump did was to basically come and take the trophy of other people's efforts. Having said that, I don't see this working, of course, because the negotiators at the moment are not the people that are actually supposed to be negotiating, as is the case between Ukraine and Russia. It's the United States that's mediating this. What I think is important, you need to have all the factions within Congo, the M23, and all the other Congolese factions that are legitimately fighting for their rights, by the way, meeting with Felix Tshisekedi, negotiating the way forward for their country. But instead, what we have Paul Kagame and Felix Tshisekedi with the United States and other players trying to negotiate peace, which I don't think is constructive nor is going to yield any result. Of course, Paul Kagame is happy with this as a sponsor of this criminality and terror within Congo. But I think the efforts that are needed at the moment are efforts that will be undertaken by the Congolese themselves, including M23 and the government of Congo and other smaller factions that are fighting for their rights inside Congo, who are Congolese, to fix this problem. But to continue placing Paul Kagame, another dictator, to be at the center of this of these proceedings, I don't think is constructive. In fact, what you do is you are encouraging a precedence of sponsored domestic terrorism. You're going to have other countries doing the same, and you can't afford to have that situation. And Paul Kagame has always been very disruptive in terms of stability in the region. We see what's happening at the moment in the capital, Gado. He's also very involved with the French. So he's not, and hasn't been a very constructive player. So what one would like to see in the DRC, one would like to see the Congolese themselves, including all the factions and the M23 and Felix Tshisekedi leading these discussions, and them achieving whatever it is that they see as their future.
And I just want to backtrack a bit, Mr. Fakude, to something that you briefly touched on when we started the conversation. You know, much has been said about Trump's so-called peace agreement there in Africa, you know, with many people saying that the priorities and how he was negotiating may not really have necessarily been in good faith, looking at the U.S. economic interests, particularly in minerals in Africa, over genuine conflict resolution. Is that a fair characterization of everything, and how might this impact regional trust in U.S. mediation?
It is a correct painting of the picture. Trump has always been motivated by two things. First is to erase Barack Obama's track record. He wanted to erase that, but importantly, he wanted to also achieve what Barack Obama achieved. And Barack Obama was or is a Nobel Prize laureate, and Trump wants that at all costs. So he's going to be, you know, doing whatever it takes and using all other unsavory means to achieve this position of being a peace laureate, but all of us know that is a joke. And again, if the Nobel Peace Prize Committee does, for some reason, grant or give Donald Trump a Nobel Peace Prize, it will be the end of the Nobel Peace Prize and also credibility of the laureate. So hopefully it's not going to happen, because it's nowhere close to any thing resembling peace. At the moment, it's busy targeting and killing the Venezuelans in the Atlantic, and is encouraging the genocide in Gaza and in other neighborhoods in the Middle East, including West Bank and Lebanon and Syria. So this is not a man that can be really called a peacemaker. He has gone on to target and kill people in Nigeria in the name of peace. So he's not achieving peace in any way or form. And I don't see him actually achieving peace anywhere else. And I think it's wrong for the world to continue nominating him, not civil society, of course, but those client states, the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu and other African despots who have gone on to nominate Donald Trump for Peace Prize, and including, by the way, FIFA, which has been, frowned upon by many people in the world, because that's what he wants. But it's not true, and people, and of course, people are observing this with laughter and ridicule, because this is the man who's acting very schizophrenic in terms of his political dealings, and he wants to get this peace prize, whatever it takes, again, as I said, because he wants to meet the record of Barack Obama.
And Mr. Fakude, I like that you just touched on Venezuela. We'll go on to that in just a moment. I just want to pick up on something, just listening to what you've just said now, and the other countries that have been seemingly cheering Trump on as he continues to do what he's been doing. And these are the countries that many analysts have termed as yes men, who are just along cheering Trump. Just what are some of the implications around these countries for them to be seeing what's happening, but also not just putting a stop or trying to put a stop, but also just seemingly cheering on? Well,
it's not only the implication on these countries, but it's also implications and the precedents that's going to be set throughout the world. Here you have a very clear dictator, a person who is willing to invade, kill, and oppress people at the drop of a hat, being praised by these small despot countries, particularly countries such as Israel and Argentina and others, who see Donald Trump as their hero. But Donald Trump is no hero. Donald Trump is an extremely dangerous man in terms of pushing back the gains of humanity, in terms of democracy and freedoms that we've all achieved. He has put everything back. American exceptionalism, which is what the entire world admired, is out the window. American promotion and so-called protection of democracy. Of course, there are a lot of other violations that have committed over the years, and invasion of countries for no reason and under false pretenses, including Iraq. But there have been, to an extent, a reference point for many countries in the world in terms of democracy. But what we see at the moment, you have Donald Trump that will endorse any form of dictatorship, any form of brutality from these despots against their own people. He has suddenly, of course, as you know, befriended the likes of Yoweri Museveni, who continues suppressing political freedoms and rights in Uganda. So these are his friends, and these are the people that he would like to see leading the world, people such as Viktor Orban of Hungary. These are his best buddies, and these are the people that he believes are right to lead the world. These are the people that he believes that the future of democracy could be better trusted in their own hands and custody. So we are in a very serious situation, and this is why I think, notwithstanding my criticism of our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, he has taken a much, much more stronger position and principled position when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump. He has stood up for Donald Trump. He has stood up on behalf of the Palestinians and condemned what's going on in Israel. With South Africa have managed to take Israel to the ICJ, and other countries have since followed. The latest to do so has been Belgium. So we're on the right side of history, and I think we need more likes of South Africa that will stand up against Donald Trump. Of course, we have our own challenges internally of these other right-wing fascist organizations such as the AfriForum and Solidarité to continue to go and peddle lies. because they themselves are fascists who like to see white privilege maintained, and they are racists in the highest form of racism. So other than that, I think Donald Trump will need the likes of Cyril Ramaphosa to continue pushing back on his politics that seek to create instability and that seek to create disharmony around the world.
And to take it back now to Venezuela, the Trump administration has escalated pressure on Venezuela, including identifying groups like the cartels as terrorist organizations and expanding military operations in the Caribbean under Operation Southern Spear. Can you just unpack the rationale behind this multifaceted campaign?
Well, it's all business, isn't it? As I've said earlier on, the Atlantic waters or Atlantic Ocean is going to be the most contested space moving forward. You've got Venezuela, you've got Angola, you've got Nigeria. All of these are on the Atlantic, although, of course, the larger part of Venezuela is in the Pacific, but there is a sizable part of Venezuela which is on the Atlantic. And the United States economy has decided to go back into using fossil fuels in terms of advancing its economy. And now they are thirsty, hungry for oil. And oil is found in all of these countries, both Angola, Nigeria, and Venezuela. And these are the new sources of oil exports, not too far from the United States, easy to transport. And that's what Donald Trump is going to be doing. In Angola, they're busy with the Lobido Corridor, which is going to be extracting minerals from other African countries, plus oil from Angola. So this is what he's doing in Venezuela. It's got nothing to do with him fighting terrorism. It's got a lot to do with fighting competition from China, India, and other countries, including Russia, that have been buying oil from Venezuela, notwithstanding, of course, that Venezuela has been sanctioned by the United States. So it's got a lot to do with that and nothing else. And he's trying to, of course, monopolize the extraction and the theft of oil in the country, including other minerals, from Venezuela by removing Nicolas Maduro and putting his own yes men in that country, or yes woman for that matter, in that country, so that he can easily do the business and advance his economic objectives to advance the economy of the United States. So this is why Donald Trump is involved in Venezuela. But I think this is likely to backlash on him because it's not going to be easy to remove Nicolas Maduro. But the other important factor, of course, is that countries such as China, Russia, and others, including India, that have been friendly to Nicolas Maduro, might just also take positions that will harm the United States. But, all of us, God forbid, we don't want to see the war in those waters because they're likely to impact on us, particularly if China does get involved.
Interesting take there, Mr. Fakude. And a quick one before I let you go now, just looking ahead to the 2026, G20 and emerging geopolitical fault lines, just how might these tensions shape or continue to shape global governance and the US's role in when we look at next year?
Well, G20 is not going to shape, it's going to be news, but it's not going to impact or shape the world actions in any way or form. But of course, we're going to continue talking about it because South Africa is going to be excluded. What I think is going to dominate the next 12 months from the 1st of January 2026 is going to be Ukraine. It's going to be the reconstruction of Gaza, as you know, that the phase 2 is about to start, which is going to be allowing aid and reconstructing and clearing the debris and possibly stop the genocide that's been taking place. And of course, the days of Benjamin Netanyahu are near in terms of ending his tenure in the dictatorship, including the genocide. He's likely to go to jail, if not excluded from political activity in Israel. South Africa, of course, is facing a lot of challenges in terms of economy. We are facing the local elections that are going to be in November 2026. Those are going to be the referendum for the ANC. The ANC is going to be extremely busy this year, but hard times for the governing ANC moving forward. So South Africa is going to be busying itself with the 2026 elections, and that's going to be more fascinating. You're going to have more scandals from the ANC exposed as other parties are trying to discredit the ANC and why people shouldn't vote for them in 2026 November.
Right, Thomas, thank you so much for your time and insights right here on the program.